I don't want to waste any time. I asked the question, who are the real children of Israel? And I'd like to answer it right away.
Go ahead, Jim Minister.
Like any good lawyer in a courtroom, he tells you what he's going to prove.
All right.
And then he goes ahead and proves it and let the jury make the decision. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has said that Almighty God, Allah, revealed to him that the black people of America are the real children of Israel. And we are the choice of God.
Right.
And that unto us he will deliver his promise.
Right.
I wanted to speak with you briefly about what's going on in New York right now, where I believe you live, maybe Massachusetts, you don't have to tell. I went to a protest, a peaceful protest at City Hall just a little over a week or two ago, and the park was shut down. You can see there was no violence going on, but the police basically informed me, a plainclothes officer informed me that the park was closed. He showed me no badge, even when I asked to see it. And he said that despite the fact that I was standing there talking to a 70-year-old woman calmly and having a polite conversation, no one was even arguing, they closed the park, they kicked us out. They told me that if I didn't leave, I could take it up with a judge, which I took to mean they would arrest me, throw me in a concrete box, and allow me to speak to a judge about the Constitution on Monday, since this was a Friday. Is Governor Andrew Cuomo allowed to shut down the Constitution because of allegations of a virus that certain medical professionals argue against?
Let's be very clear how we break down this issue. The city of New York, the state of New York, has the power to close a park based on their view that it would be helpful in defeating the pandemic. Absolutely no question about that. The Supreme Court has case after case after case saying that public health justifies closing down parks, closing down public areas. The next question is, does the governor have the right to do that? Governors generally are not authorized to make the law. They're authorized to enforce the law. So you'd have to look to see if there were legislative authority allowing the governor to close the park. If there is, then it would be legitimate. Let me put it very clearly. You have no constitutional right to endanger the public and spread a disease, even if you disagree. You have no right not to be vaccinated. You have no right not to wear a mask. You have no right to open up your business.
Wait, can I stop you? No right not to be vaccinated, meaning if they decide you have to be vaccinated, we have to be vaccinated?
Absolutely. And if you refuse to be vaccinated, the state has the power to literally take you to a doctor's office and plunge a needle into your arm. If the vaccination
Where is that in the Constitution?
If the vaccination is designed to prevent the spread.
So, all you scared to death Negroes,
just sit down. Don't you come out to defend our enemy. You sit down and you shut up and tell your master to come on out and deal with this.
One, two, three into the four.
First and foremost, giving all honor and praise to the creator of the heavens and the earth. We thank that great God for his omnipotence, for his benevolence, for his goodness, for all of those men and women he has sent to give us guidance, instruction, and exampleship. We are eternally grateful for our ancestors in whatever form or fashion they may be found. We thank him for our founding fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We thank him for Moses and the Torah. We thank him for Yeshua, most of the world knows as Jesus, for his revolutionary approach to the Injil, and Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah for the Holy Quran. Peace be upon all those noble and worthy servants of God. But as I always say, if I can be so proud, so forward thinking, to be appreciative, to be honored, to be grateful for men and women I know only from scripture, only from study, I must truly be humble enough, be respectful enough, be intelligent enough, most importantly, to thank those who he has sent in this dispensation of time. Figures that we do not operate from conjecture, but we know because either we walked with them or we knew somebody who did. And I could go on forever thanking Almighty God for everybody that he has sent that has helped push us along as a people. But I would definitely give credence to those who have personally touched, molded, and shaped me to be the man that you see before you today, and by the permission of God, to be an even greater man in the future. So I am grateful for the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and the God that he represents, Master Farad Muhammad. I am grateful for his noble, smart, articulate, and strong soldiers and students that he has raised in his image. Brother Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who is the most articulate that we have seen in this dispensation of time. I thank him for everybody that is under his leadership in the Nation of Islam. I am thankful for Brother Munir Muhammad, Brother Shaheed Muslim, Brother Halif Muhammad, those co-founders of CROW, who are the greatest defenders of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, but also the whole black experience. For they are the archives of the Nation of Islam and of our people. I am thankful, so thankful, for our Messiah, leader, and teacher, His Excellency, Ben Ami HaMashiach. I am grateful for the angel that visited him in 1966, who gave him the vision to return back to land, language, and culture, to put our people back on a trajectory to be again that special unit who would implement peace, righteousness, justice back on the earth. Eternally grateful for Nasi Shaliach, the master teacher, that revolutionary, evolutionary, formerly known as Prophet L.A. Bryant, who was the master of not just our educational system in Israel, but the one who was single-handedly responsible for the training and the governorship of how we operate as a spiritually guided people, understanding prophecy and understanding our place in it. And if I'm thankful for His Excellency Ben Ami, and I'm thankful for Nasi Shaliach, the master teacher, Prince Chancellor, I must surely be grateful and honored to thank those who helped bring that into fruition. But one in particular, the spiritual son, as I like to say, my father, my example, my leader, Prince Asiel, the Holy Redeeming Angel, and all of those great men and women, though I did not name any. I'm not leaving out none of the women who made this a reality, though their efforts are sometimes overlooked. I greet you in the words of peace. Shalom alaikum, assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you. I know my opening, and I said it before, and I'm not going to stop doing it because it's my show, but I know my opening is long-winded, but I have to, as a student of those men and women, give credence to those who preceded me so that I could have a foundation to stand on. Again, I do not say those things in jest. I do not say it to glorify or to put yeast in anybody's shoes, but I say it so that you know that we as a people can no longer be a single generational understanding of revolution. We know that the adversaries of truth have done a tremendous job in compartmentalizing us and having us take on the disposition that every generation we feel like we have to start from scratch. So I want to show the world and prove that that enmity that had been impregnated into our people no longer exists with us. So we stand on the shoulders of those who preceded us, who paved the way, who were those trailblazers, who were those founding fathers and mothers, so to speak. And I pray that those who listen to me and the men that I am so honored to be accompanied by today have the ability to take our words in conjunction and in unison with those who preceded us. Again, because we're not individuals. We understand the power of mastering self, but we understand that because we're not trying to be independent, but interdependent on the spirit and the oneness of Almighty God. So I wanted to start off with that. I played a clip because the subject matter that we're going in today is one that we feel had to be addressed, though we had previously scheduled another conversation, but everything is in conjunction with our beloved brother, who I'm going to introduce you in a moment, who I'm so honored and so privileged to have, along with Brother Moray Kananya. He's back as well, Brother Moray. But I play Alan Dershowitz. And for those who are not familiar with him, he's a Jewish lawyer who has been famous to some people, infamous to others, in his position to castigate, demonize anybody who opposes a collective of minds position. Now, I'm being as, not politically correct, but I'm being as respectful as I can. But we understand that certain members inside the European Jewish community and European society in general have certain aspirations that they're trying to attain, and they are not modest or really discreet about their approach if you listen to their language. So I play Alan Dershowitz, who himself has just stated just a month ago that there is no citizen in America who has a constitutional right to be denied the vaccinations that they are about to impose. What does that say to you? Why is a country that we know was built on the backs of our people, their servitude, their slavery, their damnation, their murder, all of a sudden have a sense of consciousness, and that it is imperative upon them to all of a sudden implement stratagems that would heal the planet and protect the populace of this country? I call BS. History is replete of examples that show that every time certain people take an initiative where they try to benefit the whole, it's actually at their detriment. We know the Tuskegee experiment and the syphilis. We know AIDS and Ebola, how those are concocted diseases in Fort Detrick, Maryland, excuse me. You can go at the beginning of this country, and we said the supposed Native Americans, when they gave them blankets to keep them warm, were full with smallpox. There is not a time where they took on a position of contriteness that it was actually genuine. So I say that to bring awareness, not to castigate or demonize anybody that are listening to my words and the words of the brothers who are about to also speak as well. But we're giving context so that we properly prepare you. We do not teach hate. We teach love, self-love. But to love oneself, you have to know how to protect oneself. I can't say you love yourself when you're eating yourself to death and you're 400 pounds overweight. You can't tell me that's love. I can't say that you love yourself and you in abusive relationships. And I'm not just talking about physical, I'm talking about emotional and psychological, but you have convinced yourself that that is needed. I can't say that's love. I'm obligated. I have a responsibility as your brother, as your friend, as a human being to show you the area ways so that you can create, not just for yourself, but for your progeny, for the generations to come, a mentality that is conducive to life so that we, in the ecology of people, can all live in harmony. Because guess what? We all said this adjective, and it is true as the sunlight is good for us. That hurt people hurt people. So it is our prerogative to try to eradicate as much hurt and pain from the planet as we can as possible. Now, I'm going to give way, but I just want to give this quick context, and then I'm going to let my brother speak. There has been a statement that has been magnified here in America about the reality of the true Jews and the context in which Hebrew Israelites or African Americans, supposed African Americans, that term, I'm using that term for colloquial reasons, but black people in America have an affinity to their reality of being the true children of Israel. Now, let me say this. Before I go any further, I'm going to play a clip and then I'm going to pass to my brother. If we look from an anthropological standpoint, and you look at the time and the region in which we identify modern day Israel. If you look just on that, the science bears witness that those are melanated people, meaning they have hue. They look like you and I. That's first. That's without question. Now, if you look from a scriptorial standpoint, when you read in New Testament, when the supposed Jews said there has never been a time that we have been in captivity. I don't know who you're talking about. If you read the Talmud, which most Jews govern themselves by, and you look at the language that they use, the vowel language, may I speak, about the reality, who they are and who the Gentiles are, it does not correlate. And if you look from a prophetic standpoint, when you talk about 400 years in captivity, when you're talking about being brought over in ships, when you're talking about being sold into slavery, on and on and on, no other people on the planet, in the history of the planet, better fits that description than you and I, who are in the hells of America, in the Isles of South Caribbean and in South America. The transatlantic slave trade prophetically fits the prophetic children of Israel to a T. So whatever realm, whatever spectrum that you want to look at it from, it all goes back to you. But we understand from a spiritual, and a responsibility aspect, to be the children of Israel, you have to fulfill the mandates. So we're not looking at bloodline, so to speak. We're not looking at anthropology, so to speak. We say we're the children of Israel because we are enacting a sense of freedom that is needed for the resuscitation of our people. Hear me and hear me well. Yes, color plays a major factor. Yes, we can go down the list. But the reality of your works, the reality of what you're able to produce, the reality of how you govern yourself in a just and equitable world, that's what gives you the greatest qualifications of being the children of Israel. And nobody else can fit that description better than you, because there is no more better people that have been created and more peaceful and more loving than you and I. Think about what just happened here in America with the supposed uprising and rioting. We just seen on continuous places our brothers and sisters get murdered, and all we did was tear down some buildings. Look how just you are. Look how loving you are. That even in midst of war, when it has been outlined, even by their president, he says looting equals shooting. That's what the president said of these United States. Their commander-in-chief, who is an avid white supremacist. That's what he's saying. So even in the midst of an open and blatant war, you still can't bring yourself to kill them. That's how loving you are. That's what makes you the children of Israel. But you have to understand that we're not preaching a pacifist approach. We're not preaching the turn the other cheek approach, but we're teaching intelligent strategy and how to appropriately handle this circumstance and situation. So how do the Jews fit into that realm? We're going to discuss that today. I'm going to play a clip and then I'm going to go straight to my brother Gamar Ahil. Oh, I gave it away. I wanted to give you a whole proper introduction.
Apologized twice Tuesday after posting on social media an anti-Semitic message misattributed to Adolf Hitler, an admiration for Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan. He later met with Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie late Tuesday afternoon, according to our Tim McManus. Here's sound from his initial apology.
On behalf of myself, I just want to let you guys know I apologize. I didn't intend any harm or any hatred towards any people. I'm for one, I'm for love, and I extend it every day. People that know me know I have no hatred in my heart, and I never try to, put another religion down to uplift my religion or my race. So, from the bottom of my heart, I just want you guys to understand that, and it's coming from me and my feelings, and I just hopefully everybody respects my platform, my opinion, to try to just enlighten my people. And just let everybody know that there's no hatred involved.
But African Americans falsely Hitler as though he's wise and speaking the truth about Jews. Stephen A., it's as bad as it gets. And here's the problem. The white citizens of America, he quotes, will be terrified to know all this time they've been mistreating and discriminating and lynching the children of Israel. In other words, let me be very clear what this means. I'm from New York as you are, Stephen A. I understand what he thinks he's saying. There is bad information out there, especially on the streets, by the way, that claims that one of the conspiracy theories goes that white Jews are only claiming to be the children of Israel and intentionally keeping African Americans, black people, in the dark, that they're in fact the real children of Israel, and keeping the world in the dark about that, because that way they can somehow control the world, the white Jews. And that here's what's critical, because he thinks, remember, Deshaun's saying I was trying to educate my people, right? He's trying to miseducate them. The white citizens of America, meaning the non-Jews, would be terrified to know all this time that they've been mistreating and discriminating and lynching the real children of Israel, meaning black people. In other words, the white Jews, like in the South, for example, the white people in the South, for example, who also hate Jews. So I'm talking about the ones who were lynching black people. The crimes they committed, they wouldn't have done it had it not been for the machinations of the white Jews who's convinced them that, in fact, they're Jews and not the black people. Do you understand? It's lunatic conspiracy anti-Semitism.
Well, Agamar Yahu Ben Yehuda, and I'm a servant of the people. I think that's pretty much the size of it. Just a little bit of background, maybe about myself. I've been like as I said, a servant, and also involved in manhood training, involved in really establishing bridges between diverse groups of people, including the youth and elders. Some of the institutions within which I have served include more recently, from about 2005 till about 2012, the Dr. Martin Luther King SCLC Ben-Ami Institute for a New Humanity in Israel, which was a conflict reconciliation center that was established there. More recently, I'm in the Philadelphia area and have been cultivating a group to actually do development projects here in the tri-state, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New Jersey area under the banner of the Tri-State Community Development Group. We view ourselves as a grassroots government in that we seek to identify challenges that confront our people at the local or regional level, and we then seek to organize within the midst of those communities to address those problems, as opposed to looking to outside entities, or even looking toward elected officials to assist in those types of concerns. If just to kind of give everyone a basic overview of where I stand on the issue of development and issues that affect Black people, whether they be found in Africa or the diaspora, I would say that the greatest challenge that is confronting Black people of color in particular, and we'll go into that a little bit more in a few minutes as it pertains to the subject as I'm being brought into it and I understand it. But the greatest challenge that is confronting our people is a lack of organization, in my opinion. And there are many other symptoms. I don't mean to diminish or undervalue the effect of systematic racism, institutionalized racism, teenage pregnancy, bad health, which you mentioned earlier, the disproportionate negative effects of our health and well-being, in that we are generally leading in every, if you can think of anything bad, our people generally are getting more than their fair share. And when you think about all of the good things, they are generally never ever getting their fair share or nearly enough. So what I have been fortunate to be able to do is to be in the midst of a movement which is which, as I understood it at the time, the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem movement, which if I was to describe them, I would say that they picked up the story where Roots ended, in that Alex Haley had identified that we were, of course, knowing that we were the descendants of Africans and had been brought over on slave ships, and had actually identified a geographical landmass that he had come from. However, he was not successful in actually returning his people back to that geographical location, although he did visit it. The African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem have actually, in my opinion, in the efforts that we undertook for now over 50 years, have picked up a kind of synergetic mantle where the vision of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the brilliant and the brilliant and really organizational, institutional capacity of the messenger, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the great success that the Nation of Islam experienced under his leadership at that time, the Pan-African vision of El Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, the beloved community of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We more or less stood as a model of all of those things coming into one particular dynamic, and we were able to go further, in my humble estimation, than any of the forerunners of the community, in that we were able to cross that Atlantic and establish ourselves, that Atlantic Ocean, and establish ourselves, and have now been operating and outside of America for over 50 years. So I present myself as someone who has been fortunate enough to see at very close proximity what nation building actually is, and we're taking those skills, those necessary aptitudes of nation building, and we're continuing in the spirit of the vision as was imparted to such men as you mentioned within that community as Nasik Shaliak and Ben Ami, of taking those principles and using them for the benefit of our people wherever they may be found. But I'm only saying that just to give some context. I'm just a brother, and I'm a son of the struggle, and I'm a son of my people in that regard. I see. Looks like he's muted.
Shalom. Shalom to the family.
Shalom.
Hallelujah. Everybody can hear me loud and clear?
Yes, sir.
Man, it's such a wonderful occasion. It's such a wonderful, to have my brother Gamar Yahu on, who I always looked up to on this journey when I first started coming home, and he was already here. And I always looked up to him because he was so dedicated and so serious and committed to this movement. Inspired me, and I'm still here. So I'm so thankful to have you on the show that me and Nasik started over a month and a half ago. So I appreciate you for coming on, and prayerfully you be here with us trying to move this forward. To the subject, that we're talking about the children of Israel and identify who those people are today,
Yeah.
our brother Deshaun Jackson got in a little bit of jam. He got into a little bit of jam. And,
Yeah.
you know, I have to appreciate him because there's a quote that says, a strong man stands for himself, but a stronger man stands for others. And so Deshaun Jackson, you know, I admire, and I admire what he did because he knew, he had to know when he made those comments or posted that Instagram meme that he was going to face intense scrutiny. I don't think he fully thought it out, but I admire his courage. However, you know, he's merely a professional athlete. He's not a social activist. He's not a historian. He's not a black or African nationalist. He's not a leader of a black grassroots organization. And for that, we have to look at his comments for what it was. What he did was on July 6th, 2020, he posted an Instagram quote that's falsely attributed to Adolf Hitler, and I'm going to co-sign it. Hitler did not say this. And the quote read, because the white Jews know that the Negroes are the real children of Israel, and because the white Jews knows that the Negroes are the real children of Israel, and to keep America secret, the Jews will blackmail America. They will extort America. Their plan for world domination won't work if the Negroes know who they were. The post also reads, Hitler was right. Now, like I said, our brother, I admire his courage for saying, I know what he was trying to say. We know what he was trying to say, but he's a professional athlete. And unfortunately, he misquoted and kind of missed the mark with his message. The quote that he used was quoted in two books. One is by a Hebrew Israelite brother named James Shorter. He wrote a book called The Hidden Treasure That Lies in Plain Sight. It's a very unscholarly work, and really it doesn't have references in it. It's really like a book of propaganda. Another book that it's mentioned that the quote is in, which many people are starting to think that this is what our brother Deshaun Jackson was reading, is a book called Jerusalem by a sister named Deneen Barnett. See, the book, it's more scholarly than the brother's book, but you can still see that she isn't a historian or somebody that's a prolific writer. You know, she seems like someone searching for truth. And so she even misquotes whatever book she was reading, she misquoted because, like I said, the quote never came from Adolf Hitler. And I'm saying us all to say that Hitler was no friend of ours. Hitler was no friend of ours. And those who are students of history and those African people who have took the time and energy to research in depth upon those who have persecuted us and those who have hated us over the last 2,000 years, we know who our enemies are. And Hitler was definitely an enemy of ours, and he did not think that the children of Israel were black or African, although they were. Hitler, and I want to get into a little bit of the history about Hitler and the Nazis. The reason why I want to talk about it is because I want to help our brothers like Deshaun Jackson in the future when they're articulating these points that they get it right. And so as a historian, I want to just be able to share with them the real, what they could have said. or how they could say it. So I wanted to understand that definitely Hitler was no friend of ours, and that I want them to know that Black people during the time of Nazi Germany, when Hitler was in charge, you know, it was a laws called the Nuremberg laws, and these Nuremberg laws were not just targeted towards Jews, but they were targeted towards Black people. They were targeted towards Black people and gypsies. And these Nuremberg laws were like Jim Crow laws. And even the Nazis even had this Black sterilization program where they sterilized all the Africans in Germany in order that they couldn't intermix with their women. So I want to say that we don't have any business quoting Hitler to try to support our views. We don't need to do that. But also I wanted to point out, give us a little bit of a history class, and then I'm going to move on, that one of Hitler's main issues with the Jews is that he believed that they had brought, or because they were mixed, he believed that they were responsible for the mixing of the races in Europe. And you talk about mixed Europeans, you're talking about Italians, you're talking about Spaniards, the Portuguese. These are what you call the mixed Europeans. Hitler did not want the Germans and the Nordic people in the north to succumb to the same things that the Southern Europeans had come with, the racial mixing. And so Hitler, one of his issues with Jews was that he believed, well, he didn't even believe, he was actually right about this, according to history, that Jews had helped Africans invade Europe. And that's what caused the intermixing and the racial mixing with creating the Italians, the Portuguese, and the Spaniards. And this is a fact. It was the Jews who had helped the Moors when they invaded Europe and took over Europe for centuries. So a lot of this hatred that Hitler had for them was regarding that history. And I'm not going to get into depth. I had some, and we can do it at another time, Nasi. Well, you know what? If you could put up the flag of Leekenbeek and the coat of arms of Leekenbeek, if you could find that, it's a Belgian flag, and I want just the audience to see what I'm talking about, so we can have some historical information or historical artifacts to kind of display what I'm talking about. You can put it up for me? Yeah, it's a flag with the Moors face on it. Right. Now, this is the current flag. This is a current county flag in Belgium. Now, this flag, if you see it, it has the face of a Moor on it. That face is the legacy of the African people who had conquered that area, and it is still displayed in their flags and coats of arms. So one of Hitler's main, when I talk about his hatred for the Jews, one of his things was the Jews were, they were aligned with Africans and Moors and helped them invade Europe, which resulted in racial mixing. So I just wanted to give a bit of that history to let us know the relationship between Hitler and the Jews and the African, and understanding that Hitler was no friend of ours, and we don't need to quote him. We know there's other ways, or there's other quotes that substantiate our claims that the children of Israel were African people. For instance, a better quote that our brothers, Deshaun Jackson, could have quoted from Colonel Abdul Nasser, which was a better quote, and I mean that some Hebrew Israelites use when he says the Jews will never be able to live in Israel in peace because they left here black and came back white. Now, see, that's a legitimate quote from a prestigious historical figure that our brother Deshaun could have used and really circumvented all of this scrutiny. So my message is that we must help our brothers out on this journey in truth and make sure that they quoting and using legitimate information. And that's what we have to do as far as the teachers are concerned, and making sure that we putting out the information for our brothers and sisters to use or disseminate this truth. Because Deshaun Jackson, he wasn't completely wrong, but he wasn't completely right. And we have to be responsible when we teaching, because we want to make sure that we teaching the right history to our babies so they can have the right perspective and can make the right choices going forward. So that was my message. Like I said, I appreciate my brother Gamariyahu for being on this podcast with us today. It's such a joy. And Nasik, I'm gonna turn it to you.
Yes, sir. What I want to do, I'm gonna make a quick statement, but I want to ask Brother Gamariyahu and you too, Moray, some questions, because I want to have a conversation about this, because I believe it's imperative, like you said, to disseminate the appropriate information so that we not just empower, but we can almost predict our future, because we have effectively implemented the necessary plan and stratagems and backup plans and backup stratagems to ensure our success. I want to say this in regards to the statement that Max Kellerman made, and I almost want to play it again so that we hear again the language that he was using. One thing our brother Walter Rodney said in his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, he said, the only great men among those who are oppressed are those who seek and struggle to destroy the oppressors. Hear what I said? If you're on the yoke of any oppressive system, us in particular being in a global system of white supremacy who are practiced by white Jews, white Muslims, white Catholics, white Christians, Protestants, white and whoever, we understand the totality of the code and the structure which they operate on. They have different dynamics which they play in that reality, even us subsequently, because we have collaborators who are actively working against our best interests. Let me say that. But remember, the only great men in an oppressed system are those who seek, and I would venture off to say, who are successful in the destruction of the oppressive system. With that in context, the reason why they were so vehemently opposed to Brother Deshaun Jackson's words, though they were misquoted and incorrect in the context, the essence of what he's saying was right and exact. And so we see throughout history that anytime a brother, especially those who are in the world of entertainment and sport and play, start to have a sense of consciousness about them, they become an uppity nigger or a recalcitrant nigger, because you are there because they know the influence, they know the effect that you have on the impressionable minds of our people. You are put there to distract. You are put there to entertain. You are put there to be a pacifist. So whenever you take on a position that is in conflict with that reality and you're starting to inform, you're starting to educate, or at least spark the necessary inspiration that will motivate our people to do their due diligence, their research, that's when you become a problem. And that's what we're seeing at hand right now, because the spirit of our people are being elevated to a certain extent that we, as Ben Ami articulated in his first book, Message to the, God's Black Man in Truth, was the power to define. That's the key. We have to, as we go forward, define our own narrative and enforce our definitions amongst each other and those who are we in opposition with. So, Brother Gamariyahu, I want to pose this question in regards to the context of the conversation, in regards into what our brother said. Talk about that power to define and how you see that systematically removing the state or the status of our people as if from being under the yoke of oppression and moving into a position of power where we're able to implement the necessary changes that's needed for our growth and development?
Well, first, let me go back by way of introduction and thank you both Morey Kananya and Nasik for inviting me on the show. Just to the best of my ability to share truth as it has been revealed and shared and taught to me. So what I want to do is to dovetail on the comments that have been made so far. I'm in perfect alignment and harmony with what you brothers have said, and give a little background to all of this, if that's okay, and give some very important facts that people should have in regard to this issue. And Morey Kananya, you're absolutely correct in that Deshaun Jackson was ill-equipped to take on this type of a conversation. And in fact, there should have been someone with more of a historical and a broader view in regard to these affairs. So we represent a circle like that. And right now, I want to share just a few things with you very quickly. First of all, the first thing that I think needs to be said with what Nasik just set up with the power to define, and I had to jump up and grab the definition, which I used to know by heart. But the book, the God, the Black Man and Truth, and the Power to Define, on page 57, you'll find the following definition of the power to define. It reads at the bottom of the page: in this spiritual war, there is a creed that says, if freedom is ever to be realized, those freedom fighters who dare to challenge a powerful enemy must be equipped with divine skill and understanding. Skill to know how to confront such an enemy. The understanding to know when and where to confront such an enemy, and the blessings of God Almighty to undertake the task divinely. Specifically, the power to define. This is the definition. So if those of you who are watching might want to take this down, I'll try to read it slowly and repeat it. The power to define: the ability to discern and the will to interpret and implement ideas and philosophies in order to be totally victorious in battle against one's enemy is the essentiality of spiritual warfare. Once again, the power to define: the ability to discern and the will to interpret and implement ideas and philosophies in order to be totally victorious in battle against one's enemy is the essentiality of spiritual warfare. Now, in this instance, as we're speaking about the subject of race, race is an artificial construct that was actually created by the European. There was a gentleman by the name of Carolus Linnaeus. I've seen it written both ways, either Carolus Linnaeus or Carolus Linnaeus. That's Linnaeus. He is the father of taxonomy. Taxonomy is the science of classification. Gentlemen such as Thomas Jefferson, Charles Darwin, these were other people who came later and were in alignment with that school of taxonomy. With the institution of taxonomy, the European at that time in the 18th century seized the power to define, because he defined all of the species on the planet, whether flora, fauna, or human. And what he did when it came to race, he classified all of the races subservient to the European. In other words, the European was at the very top of the food chain in terms of what a human being was. This is part of where the whole idea of white superiority finds its origins. And then there are other teachings that came through their academic institutions that further buttressed the idea, and now it's taken on a life of its own, in the sense that it's become a self-orbiting construct, which that's to borrow the language from the Willie Lynch letter. But reading from the Dictionary of Cultural Literacy, just to give you a little background on Carolinus Linnaeus, he was a Swedish biologist of the 18th century. Linnaeus originated our present scheme of classification of all living things. Linnaeus started the standard scientific practice of referring to animals and plants by genus and species, whereby, for example, people are Homo sapiens and sugar maple trees are Acer saccharum. So that's a little background on that, but just wanted to give you that kind of a background, because the concept of race is an artificial construct that that the European in particular has to defend with his very life, his very essence. So as it pertains to your question, there's another passage that I have here. If we have the time and it's okay to share, I'd be more than happy to share it. It sums it up total. But since Deshaun Jackson was specifically speaking from a hermeneutical or a biblical perspective, we have to deal with that. And the simple fact of the matter is, since we're dealing with the Jews, we're dealing with this concept of anti-Semitism or Semitism, all of this comes into play when we discuss the fact that there is only one race, and that is the human race. The European, who is also, in that respect, the biblical narrative, as well as the academic narrative, the scientific narrative, proves that all human species, whether black, brown, yellow, red, white, whomever you are, all human species descend from Northeast Africa and specifically the black, quote, what has become known as the Black African. So by extension, there are over 7 billion people on the planet. Each and every one of those people is an African. Each and every one of those people is a descendant from the original Eve and the original Adam. So as it pertains to the concept of Semitism, we have to then look to the story of Noah. Noah had 3 sons, it says. The biblical narrative tells us that there were 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay, now first of all, there is no precedent in any recorded history of a man and a woman having 3 different sons of 3 different races. However, this is what what we're dealing with again is the power to define, and how the European has superimposed himself into the historical narrative of the African Edenic peoples and has made himself the Israelite and made himself the quote unquote Jew. However, if we trace the lineage, see, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that of all the disciplines and all the sciences, that history is best qualified to reward all research. So if we were to go through the history of the European and ask gentlemen such as Max Kellerman, I don't know if he is a Jew or not, but if we ask him where his great-great-great-grandfather came from, and if we factor in again the biblical narrative, that nowhere in the Bible do we see places such as Romania, places like Europe, places like France, places like Russia, even though later on we see it with the ancient biblical name of Magog, but we don't see those places. The main places that we see are Northeast African geographical locations. We see Ethiopia, we see Egypt, we see Libya, we see all of these places. So what has actually happened, and I apologize, I'm jumping around, I don't want to be lengthy, but this is a very important subject for people to understand and to have the correct information on. The idea of anti-Semitism is actually an oxymoron as it is currently being used, because the sons of Noah, who were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Shem is the progenitor of all the quote unquote Semitic peoples. The father of the three major faiths as currently recorded or existing at this time, the three major faiths of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, they all descend from the same parent, and that's Abraham. Abraham was a Semite. He was descended from Shem. All of those people are people of African descent. So my point is this. I hope you all are sitting down. There have been claims made against people such as Minister Louis Farrakhan that he is an anti-Semite. The truth of the matter is that because he is a Muslim and therefore a descendant of Ishmael, who was the brother of Israel, and one was the son of Sarah, and the other son was the son of Hagar, who was a slave. You can find all of this in the book of Genesis. I'm not making it up. Israel and Ishmael, the Israelite strain and the Islamic strain, they brothers. They come from the same father. So, point being this, I hope you all are sitting down. There's no way, absolutely no way that Minister Louis Farrakhan could be an anti-Semite because he himself is a Semite. However, what the European has done, he has taken these terms and he has superimposed or replaced definitions which suit his purposes, which ultimately go back to the origins of their psyche and their mentality coming down from those Caucasus Mountains, which is white superiority.
Kang. I don't think we played the Max Kellerman video. I would like to. We played it? Okay. Yeah, play it again. Yeah.
Cheating and discriminating. That's bad. No, it's not generally that's bad, though it is. Because you can be mentioning it in another context and say, okay, that he didn't say anything offensive. In this case, it's the worst kind of bad. He's quoting, falsely, Hitler as though he's wise and speaking the truth about Jews. Stephen A., it's as bad as it gets. And here's the problem. The white citizens of America, he quotes, will be terrified to know all this time they've been mistreating and discriminating and lynching the children of Israel. In other words, let me be very clear what this means. I'm from New York as you are, Stephen A. I understand what he thinks he's saying. There is bad information out there, especially on the streets, by the way, that claims that one of the conspiracy theories goes that white Jews are only claiming to be the children of Israel and intentionally keeping African Americans, black people, in the dark, that they're in fact the real children of Israel, and keeping the world in the dark about that, because that way they can somehow control the world, the white Jews. And that here's what's critical, because he thinks, remember, Deshaun's saying I was trying to educate my people, right? He's trying to miseducate them. The white citizens of America, meaning the non-Jews, would be terrified to know all this time that they've been mistreating and discriminating and lynching the real children of Israel, meaning black people. In other words, the white Jews, like in the South, for example, the white people in the South, for example, who also hate Jews. So I'm talking about the ones who are lynching black people. The crimes they committed, they wouldn't have done it had it not been for the machinations of the white Jews who's convinced them that, in fact, they're Jews and not the black people. Do you understand? It's lunatic conspiracy anti-Semitism. Like classic anti-Semitism. That's what he thought. That is the message. What I just said is the message he thought he was educating. So what I need to know from Deshaun Jackson before an apology is legitimate is, do you understand that's nonsense? What did you mean by that? Why did you repost that? Not generally that he quoted Hitler or thought he did, but specifically.
To further expound on what my brother Gamariyahu was talking about in regards to the ethnic origin of the Israelites. See, everybody's been miseducated. Not only have we been miseducated, but the Euro-Gentile and even the European Jew has been miseducated. I was just having a dialogue with a Jewish brother who was just saying the complete opposite of what my brother Gamariyahu was saying that, oh, Abraham was a white man from Sumeria or Mesopotamia. He's not African. He's from, and so I had to tell my brother that, you know, with these made up boundaries that you guys created, you guys done fooled yourselves. Africa extends way beyond the Sinai historically, and the people that you refer to, the Sumerians or the Mesopotamians that you think were white people, you're not educated on that subject, obviously, because the Sumerians were African. How do we know that? Well, the word Sumeria actually means the black-headed people. Hey, he was shut down when I told him that. He didn't know that the word Sumeria actually means the black-headed people. They basically called themselves black people. And I told him, I said, our father Abraham, if he's your father, grew up and was born under African dominion. Not just from a historical perspective, but we can go into the biblical narrative, and it clarifies that the founders of Shinar or Sumer were African. I said Nimrod was called a Cushite. He was called Ethiopian, who was the founder of the civilization of Sumer. This is per the Torah. So don't tell me the people of Sumeria were white people. They were African people, per the Bible, per historical record. And our father Abraham, who was Shemitic, was born under that in that civilization. He too was an African person or a black person. So just expanding on what my brother was saying, you're absolutely correct. This illogical sense that that Noah could have 3 different racial groups is nothing but white supremacy jargon that's been infused as scholarship or presented as scholarship, which is completely false and pseudo. And so it is our duty as teachers, as leaders, to really have a critical approach to scholarship and making sure that we first combat these pseudo logics and we create factual, legitimate information and present that.
Right.
And so my brother, Deshaun Jackson, this is cliche, but he kind of dropped the ball a little bit. And he's a great receiver. He's a great receiver, but he dropped the ball a little bit. But it's okay, because we gonna teach him how to catch. We gonna teach him how to catch. So next time when he posts and he wants to express his truth, that he's accurate, and they can't attack him, and they can't attack the message, because like the Nasik said, or I think Mario, one of you guys said, the essence of what the brother was trying to say was real. He just dropped the ball. That's it. And like, he has amazing hands, but he dropped the ball, and we're gonna make sure the next time our brothers want to speak out, because this is such a great phenomenon. This whole Hebrew Israelite resurgence. I mean, 20 years ago, when I first came around, the Hebrew Israelite movement, it was more of a underground thing. This thing is exploding into mainstream, where we talking about Hebrew Israelites in certain forms. I mean, they talking about it on First Take and Fox News. I mean, this is now becoming a regular conversation, but it is important that, as we've been taught, Nasi Shaliach, who was the great historian scholar, he, in his training of scholars, we all benefit from that. Gamaliel benefited from that. I benefited from that. And Nasik Yosef, you benefited from that. And it's important that we continue on the legacy of Nasik Shaliach in presenting the correct scholarship so our brothers can talk intelligently about these particular subjects. But I mean, we are happy, we are excited that our brothers are coming into truth, and they defended it. And I have to mention Steven Jackson, because we didn't play any of his clips, but he doubled down and defended his brother and said, well, everything Deshaun Jackson said was the truth. I don't see what the problem is. Now, Steven Jackson got a large platform now with the whole George Floyd incident. So this is, I don't know how big this is going to be, but I mean, wow. I mean, who has a bigger platform now for social justice than Steven Jackson? And he just doubled down, co-signing the brother Deshaun Jackson, and then stood on it on CNN the next day. So it's important that we get this type of information out, so these brothers can reach out to brothers like myself and Gamaliel and Nasi Yosef, so they can be, if they're going to talk about these things, right, they're more effective. Yes. You can't be misquoting, and you can't be quoting Hitler and insinuating Hitler was a friend of ours. Hitler did not think the children of Israel were black. He thought they were white. He even referred to Jesus as an Aryan. So that's completely false. So as a historian, I just have to correct my brothers on that. And like I said, not only are we going to correct them on that, we're also going to put forth this information out there so they can begin to reference it and say the thing, be more effective in their conversation. So that's all I have to say. Nasik, I'll pass it to you, and you can close us out. I appreciate you, brothers.
Appreciate you both so sincerely. I started off saying the importance, as we read scripture, whether it be Torah, Quran, as we look throughout history, the greatest of our men and women have those who actively, proactively sought to remove an unjust system and bring forth into existence one that is equitable, one that is built on the construct of fairness, peace, prosperity. So the reason that we, and I believe we have to come back and continue this conversation next week, my prayer is that, again, that we have our brother Gamaliel joining us. I think that would be such a blessing opportunity if we can do so. But I want to leave on this, and I'm going to go to God, the Black Man in Truth, page 86. My brother Gamaliel read from it. I think it's imperative, since what he said, as well as Moreh Kananya, that I read this. And this one, I'm talking to our people, but I'm also talking to a lot of our young brothers and sisters in the land who have, and it's not their fault, but have developed a context of almost as if, and I want to use the correct term because I don't mean to be offensive, but I just want to say passive. We've become very passive and unaware negligent in our responsibilities in the pursuit of freedom in its totality. It's a mental reality, but it's also a physical reality. And that cannot be missed upon our people. We can't be so spooky and esoteric that we don't develop the physical manifestations of God's world, of a world of peace and truth and justice that our babies can live in. We can give them a mind, but if we don't give them a physical, tangible reality, we did them a grave disservice and injustice. So, coming from the words of Ben-Ami, I want to read this to further give context to what I'm saying. When the world has been resurrected and taken on flesh, the presence of God will be known by the works of those who come in his name. No one can declare the possession of the keys of heaven as long as they are seen building and amassing material wealth and the modern comforts of hell with no apparent signs of entering the door that leads out of hell, whether it be spiritual or physical. To be in a heavenly state of mind while living in hell will just not work. First of all, a heavenly state of mind is either drug-induced or out of cycle with natural state of being. In order for one to be in a heavenly state of mind, one has to be in an environment that causes one's mind to reflect on the things of God. God is not a myth. God is real. If you don't have an environment that reflects, that represents, that embodies the supposed mentality that you say that you are in support of, then it doesn't exist. That's why we are so consistent, persistent in our pursuit to inform, to make aware, and to create the necessary institutions that allow you to see in totality what is taking place so that you know what is needed to fortify and protect yourself. Again, we cannot be so mythical, so esoteric, so spiritual, so far off that we're not able to make it tangible. Now, this is what Ben-Ami said. Scriptures bear witness. Those in more contemporary times bear witness to this reality. That yes, it must be a state of mind, but it also has to be a physical environment. So we say this again. That means that you're going to have not just a level of independence, but interdependence on one another. That means we're going to have to create an ecology of discipline, of structure, of accountability, of responsibility, of love and consideration, sympathy and empathy, that we're able to protect ourselves from each other, from ourselves, and from any outside force that may try to intrude, to interfere, or interrupt the progress of God, which is the fulfillment of heaven on earth, which is the physical representation of a place of peace. That's why we speak it every time we introduce ourselves, every time we come into a room, and whenever we leave. We say shalom alaikum. We say shalom. They say assalamu alaikum. We say those things because we want our words to represent our reality, and we want our reality to represent our words, our thoughts, our actions. So again, I thank my brother, Gamariyahu, for the blessed opportunity of coming on and embracing what we're doing as we continue to build and develop the universal brotherhood. I thank my father for that institution. But it has to be made manifest in this day and time without any interruptions, without anybody putting their self above the whole. Because we look at the reality of when any nations fail, it's because they move from a collective concept to an individual one. When individuals make their self-priorities more important than the priorities of the whole, we're not going to let that happen anymore. That's what the universal brotherhood, the universal sisterhood, the universal family is about. I thank Morey Kananya for joining us again. He's off vacation, so he's back to work. That's a little joke. He gets it, though. But we're here, and we're going to continue not to just talk and teach, but to do the work. So I thank you for listening. As I leave you, as I greeted you, in the words of peace, Shalom Alaikum, Assalamu Alaikum, Wa Alaikum Salam.
Oh,